And the question is, do you support an ambulance fee wherein insurance companies pay for those insured and the fee is waived for the uninsured?
Well, I'm going to say exactly what I wrote on the volunteer firefighters questionnaire. So consistent. I think that there's flaws in it. I don't think that we have adequate protections right now to make sure that the fee will only be charged to the uninsured and that people won't get billed repeatedly. I think that it's very problematic for me that the funding not go into fire protection and expansion of services or the capital projects that we need. We have a vastly underserved up-county area with fire protection, and I don't support an ambulance fee that goes into the general fund. But if those things were addressed, yes, I would support it.
Thank you. Next candidate is Nancy Florian.
Thank you. Yes, I support the fee. It's not my first choice of funding things, but we have a serious budget challenge this year. Right now, there's a referendum going on, as you've probably been asked to sign a petition. We're looking at $14 million worth of potential cuts now in services for Montgomery County to address that issue if it's successful. This is a serious issue. To the extent that it's fully covered by insurance, it should not affect anyone directly. And we worried about this for several years to make sure that was the case. I recently, in the course of the budget, I actually had an accident in the district and required an ambulance ride. I've never actually seen a piece of paper on this because it was handled through my insurance, because all of our neighboring jurisdictions, except I think it is Howard County, charges an ambulance fee. And if you benefit from our shared relationship with all of our neighboring counties and are picked up by an ambulance in an adjacent jurisdiction, you'll be charged an ambulance fee to them. This is a nationwide solution to a problem that everyone is experiencing. This is a transport fee. It's a fee for the use of services. As I said, it's not my first choice of funding government, but it is a standard practice throughout the country. And people should be aware that if the ambulance fee referendum is approved, we will be looking, and I believe we'll be starting in September. The county executive has already sent over his memo on this subject. Be prepared. So thanks.
Next candidate is Raj Narayana.
In principle, I'm opposed to the ambulance fee. I think this throughout the country, counties have been scrounging instead of being upfront that we are supported by the income tax and the real estate tax and the funds we get from the government. Everywhere to cover up cost increases, there has been a creep into all kinds of fees that have been added on. And in addition to that, there has always been, let's pass it on to someone else. I think it's time that as part of a restructuring process, we need to look at it in a long-term way to get rid of all these kinds of fees that have been added on. There's only one example. There is many more fees of this nature that are sitting, including the energy tax that got added on recently. All of these need to go, and we need to be honest and say that if we have to pay for what the services that we are going to provide, we do it upfront instead of doing it through the sneak tax approach. To me, this is sneak tax. But the reality is, given the fiscal issues, there are no easy answers at this time. It should be a long-term process to eliminate it and not immediately. But I agree with it. This is a bad idea, and we should get rid of it in the long term. Thank you.
Thank you. And our final candidate on this question is Betsy Trachtenberg.
Well, this is a very tough issue, and we all struggled with it. And I voted for the fee. And my decision was primarily based on dollars. I had concerns about whether or not it would potentially decrease calls into 911. There really isn't evidence that it has done that in other jurisdictions, especially those that are in the metropolitan area. But of course, there is a concern because we have more and more people without insurance, and we have more and more poor people that actually live and that need to have access to health services. The issue with the new bill that was promoted by the executive, which the council passed, is that the process on it for insurance billing was improved. There was better language about a waiver that would be provided to those that could not afford to pay for the fee itself. So I supported it because I didn't believe there was $14 million in last year's budget that we could find that readily. And by the ability of passing it, we were able to fund things like respite care for those that are terminally ill. We were able to provide increased mental health services for those that are vulnerable. There were a lot of things we were able to do about ride-on service. In other words, we didn't have any place to go for the $14 million. Council President has indicated there was a memo that was sent over last week from the executive. It was sent over, and basically what's going on because of the potential for the referendum is we're not going to be able to collect the fee, folks. We're not going to be able to collect it, which means that we are going to have to find savings in the short term and perhaps savings in some of those programs that I've outlined. So it is concerning, but we did it in the most thoughtful way that we could, and we will monitor it. But again, things can turn around because of the referendum and what that potentially will do to the revenue source, which we need at this